Mr. Pinella?
All rise. St. Johns County Circuit Court of John Smithton, the Honorable Judge Smith presiding. Good morning, everyone. Please be seated. Thank you.
Okay, State, you call your first case?
Lauren Valentine.
Valentine.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Terry Shoemaker on behalf of Ms. Valentine. Your Honor, I was literally just retained at 8 o'clock this morning. I know it's set for a sentencing from a failed PTI. I haven't had an opportunity to look at anything. I would just ask for a quick continuance so that I can take a peek.
We do it next week, September 6th. Is that enough time, or do you need?
A little. I will be out of town on the 6th. I'm going to see my father up in New York. I don't know what we have coming up on pre-trials or if they're totally booked. Just put it on a pre-trial. Do it the week after.
About September 9th.
Yeah, I'm just going up Friday, coming back Sunday, so September 9th.
September 9th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then that concludes my business. May I be excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sign for that.
As soon as she tells you.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Travis Webb.
Thank you
Travis
very
Webb.
much. Thank you, and I'll call you.
Judge, can we approach him?
Get the signs. Okay. Twice or just once? Just once.
Thank you.
No problem.
See y'all later.
Bye, Terry.
Excuse me. Turn off your phones, please. Turn off your phone.
All right, Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, Your Honor. We are just requesting, along with and have communicated to the state a 6-week pass. I believe you have a November 1st court date, if we could get that.
November 1st at 9 a.m.
Okay? And you'll probably have to sign on.
Thank you, Your Honor.
She texts you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry?
You're all good.
Yep, I'm all good. He's just.
Tanner Slayton.
Go ahead and sign, sir.
November 3rd. What is on?
Good morning, Your Honor.
How are you? I'm well. Mr. Slayton is in custody and he's approaching from the audience. If you can stand next to me, I'm sorry. Your Honor, we passed this from earlier this week for site to screen him, and he has been approved for the program.
Okay.
And at this time, he has authorized me to enter an admission with the understanding that the state would recommend that we maintain the withhold of adjudication, add a condition that he complete the site program at the St. Johns County Jail, and then engage in their aftercare upon release. And he would have an additional condition that he be fitted with either a handheld or a leg monitor scram device for the pendency of his probation.
So how much probation term does he have left?
He is set to terminate April 5th, 2026, Your Honor.
All right, so raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right, sir, state your full name.
Tanner Joseph Slayton,
How old are you, Mr. Slayton?
29,
How far did you go in school?
GED.
Are you able to read, write, speak, and understand English?
Yes.
Are you under the influence of any medication, drugs, or alcohol today?
No, sir.
Have you ever been diagnosed with any type of mental health condition that might affect your ability to understand what's going on right now?
No, sir.
Your attorneys informed me that you wish to change your previously entered denial and enter an admission to violating conditions 2, 3, and 7. That's for use of intoxicants, and what were the other 2, 2, and 3?
Your Honor,
Left the county, left the county, and,
there was an arrest, although the charges were subsequently dropped.
All right, so you'll be admitting to violating those 3 terms of your, or conditions of your probation in exchange for your admission based on the negotiated agreement. The court will reinstate you back on probation. You'll be required to complete all of the previously imposed terms and conditions with the added condition that you complete the psych program at the St. Johns County Jail. You'll remain in custody to complete the inpatient or in-custody portion. Then when you are discharged from the jail, you'll be required to complete all of the aftercare treatment. You're also going to be required to be outfitted with either a scram or a handheld portable breath test device. Is that your understanding of the agreement?
Yes, sir.
Is anyone forcing you or threatening you in any way to get you to do this?
No, sir.
Has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea?
No, sir.
I have a document in my hand that is an admission of violation of probation or community control. Is this your signature on the last page?
Yes, sir.
By signing this document, are you indicating to the court that you've read this document? You've also gone over it and discussed it with your attorney?
Yes, sir.
You understand that you have the right to have a hearing on this matter, or you could have required the state to prove that you willfully violated these 3 conditions of your probation during that proceeding. You were entitled to be represented by counsel. If you couldn't afford counsel, the court would have appointed counsel for you. You could have testified or remained silent. You could have compelled witnesses to testify on your behalf, cross-examine witnesses that might have been called against you, and appealed your conviction and sentence to a higher court. You understand that you're waiving all those rights if I accept your plea today?
Yes, sir.
Have you had sufficient time to meet with your attorney, talk about your case, and go over any possible defenses you might have had?
Yes, sir.
Do you need any more time to speak with her before I accept your plea?
No, sir.
Are you satisfied with her representation of you?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Johnson, do you stipulate that there is sufficient factual basis for the violations?
Yes, Your Honor.
The court does find sufficient factual basis for the violations. Mr. Slayton, the court accepts your admission, finds that entered into freely, voluntarily, and intelligently, that you are coherent and alert, and that you understand the nature of the charges and the consequences of your plea. Pursuant to the plea agreement, your probation is reinstated. All prior terms and conditions remain in effect, with the added conditions that you must complete the site program at the St. Johns County Jail, as well as any aftercare. You will also be required to be outfitted with either a scram device or a handheld portable breath test device. You have 30 days to appeal the legality of this court sentence. If you wish to appeal, you cannot afford an attorney. It won't be appointed.
2 questions. How long is the device to be on?
I think throughout the
Term of
pendency of probation.
Yes,
And when shall it be placed on, prior to release?
yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. That concludes my business. May I be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good holiday.
Austin West?
Austin West.
Morning, Judge. Good morning. Paul Braddock from Mr. West. Judge, we're hearing on his request for early termination of community control.
All right. State, what is the state's position on this?
The state does object to the early termination of
Were you-
community control. This was a downward departure sentence.
They'll call you. Okay.
That gave him the opportunity to remain in the community, and he had a violation of his community control back in October or back at the end of last year for not being where he was supposed to be, so the state would object to early termination.
All right. What decision I call?
The defendant would like to talk to
All
the
right,
court.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, counsel, you may inquire.
Please state your name, please.
Austin West.
Why are you asking this court for early termination of community control?
About a month and a half ago, my probation officer let me know that my good behavior was noted and complying to everything I needed was noted, so I was able to get off early.
Okay. What can you tell the court about the technical violation that you previously had?
The technical violation was about a month and a half ago, a month and a half after I gotten out, and I was going to get gas and water. That's where I was at. I wasn't doing anything with anybody else. My probation officer had seen me leaving work, going to the gas station. The reason I did that is because I had from 5 o'clock to 5:20 to get home, and I know that gas is an essential and water as well, but at the time, I didn't know that all I had to do was call my PO and ask her for permission to do that. So I went to go get gas and water, and she had called me and told me she had to violate me because I was not where I was supposed to be.
How would you describe your relationship with your community control officer?
Awesome, we're good. She's helped me, like she has support, she's helped me push forward to do good, and it's not just someone that brings me down, she wants me to do better. We're good.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the court?
Your Honor, since I've been out, I've been working and maintained a job. I've not been working. I'm in a trade, build kitchens. I've passed every drug test. I've been in probation diligently, on time, even if before. I've never, since that violation left, I've not been out of place or done anything. I've asked my probation officer anytime I needed to leave or do anything that was not on my list. I've also completed substance abuse and mental health class within the first 6 months. That was a condition of my release. I've stayed clean. I've kept up with my medicine, with my mental health. I've been doing what I need to do.
And last but not least, what support do you have from your family to help you succeed?
My mother. My mom's my biggest main support. My probation officer, she's also like a friend, and she helps me out with everything. So mainly my mother on my probation officer.
Judge, I attended the witness.
I have no questions for him.
That's all I have, Judge.
Any witnesses?
No, sir.
I would say, Judge, his mother's here, but I don't think she has anything else to add.
Okay. Under argument?
Judge, all I can say to the court is the person who knows Mr. West the best, other than his mother, is his community control officer, probation officer. And she had no objection to this. In fact, she suggested it. So I hope the court will put some weight to that situation there. Again, she knows him better than anybody here.
And again, this defendant has a pretty lengthy criminal history and was given the opportunity, even though he's forwarded out to prison, he was given the opportunity to remain in the community. He violated the condition of that community control, and it was submitted up as a technical violation. So it's the state's belief that based on the original sentence and the fact that he had a violation during the first few months of that he should remain on community control.
How long has he been on?
His plea was
It's
entered.
been over a year. I think July 13th was the year, Judge.
Community control for a
Yes,
year?
sir. Yes, sir.
He's had one technical violation.
Yes, sir. That was, like you said earlier, and he did get sentenced to 270 days in county jail.
He was sentenced in December 22, I believe.
He got some gain time, so he got
How
out.
much probation does he have left?
He had a 10-year probation sentence, so I think, 9 years, something like that.
I'm going to grant the request, motion for early termination of community control. It's going to give you an understanding that it was a violation, but it was a technical violation. We'll give you a chance to keep on the straight path, okay?
Sir, thank you so much.
You're doing well, stick with it. You're still on probation. It's not off of that. So make sure you continue to report, make sure you abide by all the conditions.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Judge, do you need me to send a proposed order, or how do you want to do this?
No,
Okay.
located in probation, and what they need. All right, if you'll step over there and meet with probation officer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Joel Sampson. Oh, is it Zoom? We might have to take this one later, it's a Zoom one.
Sorry?
I think.
He's at the hospital, Your
So
Honor.
it'd be Zoom.
or-
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Do it now, or you want to wait?
up to the court judge.
I know we have a couple others still, but I just didn't.
Well, let's call the others, and then we'll come.
Mr. Pinella? Mr. Pinella is a Mr. Pinella is a PTI, Your Honor. And I know one of the bailiffs down at the hall before court started, and we did not get an answer from him. I don't know if you want to have it sound.
Can we just down the hallway for Carson Pinella, please?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Looks like there's active service for him.
Those are the active services guy. That's with George. Transportation.
Okay.
So, reset. November 1st, hopefully. Transport. All right, November 1st at 9 a.m. for sentencing. Kanye Proctor. Mr. Proctor, if you'll come up here. Mr. Proctor, it's my understanding your attorney, Mr. Odom, was not aware of this sentencing hearing, and she was rearrested. So he's, clerk is reaching out to him. He can't be present today. I'm going to bring you back next week, and we'll notify him of that, make sure he's present for you.
Yes, sir.
So we'll come back on September 6th, at 9 a.m. at clerk. And we'll make sure that Mr. Odom is aware of that date. if you would. All right, thank you, sir. I'll have you sign for that for you.
Give me 1 second, sir.
Douglas Thompson.
Thompson?
You can say no.
State, is the attorney here?
I don't know if you had an attorney assigned, Judge.
Mr. Smith.
I told Tyler. Need the passage, Judge. She's outside.
We can call Mr. McCulla, Judge.
Mr. Smith, they're gonna track that, or Mr. Thompson, they're gonna provide their attorney, he's out in the hallway somewhere. All right, who are we calling?
Jesse McCulla.
Jesse McCulla.
Good morning, Judge. And Your Honor, that's the other case for Jesse McCulla, who is here for imposition of sentencing, Your Honor.
And Judge, this is one where he was scheduled for sentencing earlier and did not appear for that sentencing hearing. And it was an agreed upon sentencing at the time. At the time of plea entry, he was made aware that if he didn't appear, that agreed upon sentence would not stand.
And Judge, Mr. McCulla is aware of that, and the court's aware, I think, of the issues that were pending at the time with Mr. McCulla as far as the substance abuse issues he was having, his mother's illness, cancer, and I think he wanted to address the court basically and explain why he wasn't here. Wait till the judge asks.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Mr. Ellis?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. McCulla, you were aware that you were set for sentencing back in August 2nd?
Yes.
And you failed to appear?
Yes.
Can you explain to the court the circumstances surrounding that failure?
I've had a long drug history, 20 years of using no abuse again. I was out, and I woke up late, and it was time to be here. I only have a bicycle and a trip, like a run light, so I know I wasn't gonna make it in time. And I did try to call Mr. Eller to get a hold of him.
So what did you do?
I got scared and stayed at the house.
You didn't bother to come even if you'd be late.
I didn't know if I figured I'd be in violation still.
And Judge, I can tell you, his fiance did text, and I think I alerted the court that he was on his way, but the court had a schedule and set the time, and I advised them of that. But I would just ask the court to consider the circumstances of his particular addiction that he had. And I can represent the court. He's always been articulate, respectful of the court, and to me, and to the system, except for this stage up here, Judge. So I'd ask the court to sentence to a reasonable amount and/or affirm the plea.
I'm not going to give him the sentence as negotiated, so.
Yes, sir.
It's at this point, an open plea to the court. We can proceed to sentencing now, or you're ready to do that, or if you want some additional time.
We have no more.
I'm not going to proceed.
Judge, he's indicated to me that he wishes to proceed today. Is that correct?
Okay. Any other witnesses would you like to call on this time? State, you have any witnesses?
No, sir.
On your argument, start with State.
Your Honor, at this time, this defendant, this did start off as higher charges. There was an agreement to reduce these charges down to reach the plea agreement that we have. There is a 3-year minimum mandatory sentence with the firearm charge. There was an agreement for DOC time above that time in light of the facts of this case and his history and the charges. And at this time, for his failure to appear, we also don't believe it's appropriate for him to get the agreed upon sentence. So we would ask at a minimum that he get 7 years in the Department of Corrections.
And Judge, the court's already heard from Mr. McCulla about his history of substance abuse, the fact, I think, that his mother was ill. He was honest with the court straightforwardly this morning, indicating that he overslept. I suggest to the court that upon entering of the plea, he saved resources for this county as well as the court, avoiding a trial. So for those reasons, Judge, I'd ask the court to impose a reasonable sentence.
There should be 5 charges,
He pled
2
to-
cases.
Pledge all 5.
2 of them were reduced, I think.
Yes.
2 of them were reduced to what?
I think
Possession with intent instead of trafficking.
So count 1 is possession of intent to sell.
Yes, sir.
Introduction of contraband, possession of a Schedule G substance, and possession of cocaine, and then 1 count of possession of a firearm, and convicted felon.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else from the other side?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. McCulla, you have previously entered a plea of guilty to those charges. The court adjudication guilty on all 5 offenses on each of the 2 second-degree felonies. You're adjudicated guilty, sentenced to 6 years in Florida State Prison, 3-year minimum mandatory attached to the possession of a firearm by convicted felon. Each of the third-degree felonies, you sentenced to 5 years in Florida State Prison. You have credit at this point for 75 days that you've already served. Your driver's license will be suspended for a period of 6 months upon your release. Must be a standard felony 4 cost plus $100 cost of prosecution, $100 cost of investigation and education. That wasn't negotiated, correct?
It was.
Once again, I'll send it to you. You have 30 days to appeal the legality of this full sentence. If you wish to appeal, you cannot afford an attorney.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're ready to move forward on Douglas Thompson.
All right.
State's ready.
Okay.
Judge, I'm going to stand in for Mr. Smith this morning. Mr. Thompson's here on a failed PTI. The state's recommendation here is a withhold of adjudication, 24 months of drug offender probation. And I've discussed with him that that includes a substance abuse evaluation and recommended treatment, 2 AA or NA meetings a week, and 50 community service hours.
Sir, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to be able to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, sir, state your full name.
Douglas Aaron Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, you have previously entered a plea of no contest to 1 count of possession of a Schedule II substance that is a third-degree felony. It is punishable by up to 5 years in Florida State Prison. The state attorney's office had entered into a contract with you. And you completed the terms of that contract, and the state was going to dismiss this charge against you. However, you failed to complete the terms of that contract, so you are now back before this court for sentencing. You are entitled to a sentencing hearing. This court would have conducted a sentencing hearing, would have heard from you, any witnesses that you wanted to call, heard from the state, any witnesses they wanted to call. But ultimately, the court would have imposed an appropriate sentence based on the facts that have been presented. However, your attorney has indicated today that you want to forego a sentencing hearing and instead go ahead and accept the state's offer to resolve your case without going through with a full sentencing hearing. And the court would go along with that. It would be a withhold of adjudication based on 24 months of drug offender probation in order to complete a substance abuse evaluation within 30 days and then follow up with any recommended treatment. You'd be required to attend at least 2 AA or NA meetings per week, and you'd be required to complete 50 hours of community service. It would also be standard felony court costs plus $100 for cost of prosecution, $100 for cost of investigation. The court would also waive the cost of your supervision. Is that what you want to do today?
Yes, sir.
Counsel, is there any legal reason why the court would have those sentences at this time?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Thompson, pursuant to the agreement, the court will withhold adjudication, place you on 24 months of drug offender probation, order that you complete a substance abuse evaluation that needs to be done within 30 days of today, and you must follow the recommended treatment. You must attend at least 2 AA or NA meetings per week. You must complete 50 hours of community service. Standard felony court costs plus $100 cost of prosecution, $100 cost of investigation, and I will waive his cost of supervision. You have 30 days to appeal the legality of this court sentence. If you wish to appeal but cannot afford an attorney, it won't make 20 for you. I certainly step on over there to the probation officer. You're released today.
Viola Manning.
Manning. And this is a failed PTI.
Anyone? Nobody else knows?
And Your Honor, the reason for the failed PTI, it looks like it's just costs.
Is this set for 1:30?
Yes.
This is set for 1:30.
Oh, even better. Mr. Smith will be here.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Lykia McCaskill. And Your Honor, may we approach on Ms. McCaskill?
You got sentenced to probation.
All right, what was it, September 13th?
Yes, sir,
Yes,
that's
sir.
fine.
September 13th.
So just so it's on the record, we're
Actually,
asking.
let's just do it,
September 11th is the next court date for the other.
September 11th is.
And if we want to put it on that one, that's fine with me. I know the 13th I have depositions that morning anyhow.
I just wasn't sure if we wanted to, have it in the same courtroom as the code of ethics.
It's just fine. Go ahead and have it on the prison.
Let's do September 12th. It's an arraignment date.
Okay.
Thank you.
September
Oh,
12th at 9 a.m.
Mr. Hubbard and I are ready for Mr. Sampson whenever the court's ready for Zoom on that one. I forgot to mention that up there.
All right, we do, who's going to be appearing?
It is,
You need the report. It's
I
right
got it.
there. Dr. Hamilton. Is that who's going to be appearing?
Yep. All right, let's call something else. I need to get back to you after you guys, please.
That's the only other one I have. I don't know what else is on the docket because some things might have gotten continued already.
Walter Eltry.
Eltry.
That's me, Judge. He was supposed to be, basically a turn-in today, I believe, from what I saw. It was an agreement. He pled. I have an order and, his conditions ready for Your Honor, but I didn't see the attorney, so I didn't know. Who's the attorney?
Adam Lewison.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who that is, so I didn't know if he was here.
Mr. Eltringham, do you know where your attorney is, Mr. Lewison? He'll be here when?
You said he was delayed and due here around 9:30.
Okay, all right, go ahead and have a seat, I have to wait for your attorney.
Like I said, it's on his way.
Judge, I can tell you on the afternoon docket, there's a Jason Trauber, and that case was closed out in Putnam County yesterday.
All right, that's all.
So we can just, yeah.
We'll move into the Amato case. Mr. Lewinson is here. Mike, let's see if you can fix this with him. Jervis, what are you here? Observer. Excuse me. Just observe.
Surgery did you wear here? I agree. Oh, we got Joel Samson. We're good.
Okay.
No idea. Thank you, Mike.
I have two things for you to mark. I just want to see that could be together. Yeah, I mean, this is. Thank you. Mr. Sampson and.
I think Samson will do it.
The filing was done by Ms. Laguana, Rosa Laguana. So she should probably be present as well.
Samson.
And Ms. Laguana.
I got a text from Jesse Dreiser to let you all know that the mics are on, even if you're whispering. Dreiser just texted me to let you know that the mics are on, even when you're whispering.
All right, Mr. Hubbard.
Thank you, Judge. We're here for our annual hearing. I'm in receipt of a forensic psychological evaluation that was conducted on July 15, 2024 with regards to Bobby Joel Samson.
All right, how about hearing on behalf of Mr. Sampson there?
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, Mr. Sampson.
Good morning. morning, Mr. Samson. How you doing, sir? Good to see All right, who else am I hearing this? Quano?
It's Rosa Laguna for the Agency for Persons with Disabilities.
All right, thank you for being present. Mr.
Here.
Hubbard?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've reviewed the evaluation that I've received, and at this time I'm prepared to stipulate to its admission.
State, have you also reviewed it?
Yes, sir, and the state would also stipulate to the court relying upon this report for today's purposes.
All right, Ms. Luano, can you just update the court on what's next for Mr. Sampson?
At this point, because of the situation where he's being recommended to secure residential, we would basically need a court order to that effect. I will send it to you, and he would be transported back to 3DP.
Mr. Hubbard, you were in agreement with that?
I have no objection after reviewing the evaluation.
The state doesn't have an objection either.
All right, the court has reviewed the forensic psychological evaluation offered by Dr. Anderson. It does appear that the most appropriate placement is a residential facility for persons with intellectual disabilities with a 24-hour awake supervision. So the court will grant the request. I will await your order. I will sign that order as soon as I receive it. When will he be transported?
It would be as soon as possible. Secure residential facility, we have to make sure we have all the documents in order and the better availability.
All right. Okay, I will await that order, and I will have that signed, and then he will be transported to a secure residential facility for persons with intellectual disabilities with a 24-week supervision. We need another review date in a year from now.
I think so.
Yes.
All right, so we'll set another review date, Madam Clerk. We'll schedule that, I assume, at some point. We can pick one today if you want. This is. Oh, wait,
I think we normally get the report. And then,
For the agency's purposes, it's better if we have a date scheduled now so that we can schedule the evaluations, et cetera.
I don't think we have the 25 calendar yet.
We'll assume it's a year from now then, and we'll work out the hearing.
We can just set it as a tentative date for Friday, August 29th. And that means it's subject to change. Let's just go ahead and put it as a tentative date for Friday, August 29th.
At 9 o'clock.
At 9
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. You all can log off.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I believe that's all I have this morning.
Thanks, Judge.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is Mr. Lewis in arrived yet?
Do it 10 o'clock, he said, is DPS.
All right. Let's go ahead and then just move into the Amato case. All right, I believe there was one person that was going to receive a word this morning that one of the listed victims in the case could not appear because of flight trouble with some weather, I guess, and requested to appear via Zoom. There was no objection to that. Risco? That's correct. Is that person who's logged on right now?
Yes, sir.
do you pronounce his last name?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Baracus, if you can hear me, if you could please turn your video on, but mute your microphone. All right, we're here for sentencing. Mr. Amato, if you want to come forward and sit next to your attorney, please. For the record, who do I have appearing on behalf of the state of Florida?
Sarah Thomas for the state of Florida.
And on behalf of the defense?
Tim Probisco.
Mr. Amato is present. All right, we're here for a sentencing hearing. Mr. Amato previously entered a plea of no contest to 1 count of aggravated battery, which was a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 15 years in Florida State Prison. Carrying a concealed firearm, third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in Florida State Prison. 1 count of fleeing or attempting to elude, a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in Florida State Prison, and 1 count of reckless driving. The aggravated assault, he did not plead to, right? That was going to be dismissed?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. And the state, there was no agreement other than the state did agree to waive the 10-year minimum mandatory on count 1. And what are the his guidelines state?
I have a score sheet for you, Judge.
All right.
After we remove 3, the bottom is going to be 25.7, and I've given this to Mr. Probisco, and he's looked over it as well.
Mr. Probisco reviewed this score sheet, and you agree with it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so here's based on the score sheet, the minimum possible sentence, unless the court were to find that there are statutory mitigating circumstances present, would be 25.164 months. The maximum possible sentence is 25 years, 25 plus the reckless driving, it's just over 25 years.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Both sides received the pre-sentence investigation report in this case.
Yes, Judge.
Yes, we have, Your Honor. I've reviewed it. I have no objection or acceptability.
State.
We have no objection, Judge.
All right. Court also received a notice of filing for 1 letter of support that was provided by Michael Amato. We did receive that. I read that letter.
Thank you.
I also received notice of filing transcripts of DK, Noam Simon, Nosham Karinsky, Shnor Barakis, and Chanel Karinsky. I reviewed that as well as the sentencing memorandum that's provided by the defense. And I also received a psychological evaluation. I reviewed that as well. All right, any other matters that we need to address before we begin?
Judge, I think the victim's family just also wanted me to address that several letters were sent to the court, but I've explained to them that.
I will address that now. Anyone who sent a letter to the court without providing it through counsel was not read and will not be considered by this court. It is proper to ex parte and send emails or anything else to the court without it being handled through the proper attorney. So I cannot review those. I cannot look at those. So I did not read any letters that were submitted or that were emailed to my judicial system. All right, next, but I will certainly hear from witnesses today, anybody that wants to be heard. So you have some witnesses that you'd like to call?
I think Mr. Probisco had planned to call his expert
Sure.
first for timing, and I agreed to let him
That's
know.
fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Probisco, you may call your first witness.
We call Dr. Nicolino.
Dr. Nicolino, come forward. Where it comes to the witness stand.
Yes, sir.
Can we clear that off, please, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
Good morning. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Go ahead and see. Counsel, your witness.
Yes, sir. Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
Dr. Jill Nicolino.
And Your Honor, the state in defense have stipulated that she is qualified to render an opinion in this case, so we're just going to get into it.
This court is familiar with Dr. Nicolino. She is qualified to provide opinions.
Thank you. Just by virtue of background, ma'am, can you confirm that you did some psychological testing and interviewing in this case back in September of 2023?
Yes, I did.
And you did that at my request in furtherance of Mr. Amato's defense?
Yes, I did.
And you offered a report in this case on July 1st, 2024?
Correct.
And that would, is several page report just for the record, and that would be the report we gave to the court?
Correct.
All right. Ma'am, I want to talk to you in a general context first. You are, I think, qualified to talk about this in terms of the juvenile brain development. Can you talk a little bit just in a general context about the frailties that a young person would have in having the level of maturity and wherewithal as a person that's, perhaps 40 or 50 years old?
The brain doesn't stop developing until about 24, 25 years old. And so the frontal part of the brain, which is the executive functioning part, it's the planning, it's the emotional regulation, it's impulse control, decision-making, problem-solving, etc. So that part of the brain does not fully develop until adulthood, which is considered, as far as the brain goes, 24, 25 years old. In adolescence, the emotional part of the brain is fully developed, so they have the emotions that are, full, with the problem-solving aspect of it, the decision-making, impulse control, much less than what would be considered typical of an adult. So adolescents in general tend to make a lot more reckless mistakes.
Okay. And do we extend that definition of adolescence and that behavior up towards the 23 marker?
Towards 24, 25, as far as the brain development, yes, the frontal lobe.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but are we appreciating that there's a frailty in the mind, even in the circumstance of a young person that has a quality background and support and resources and is free from substance abuse?
Correct.
Okay. Let's just introduce the factor of substance abuse into that equation of a young person, say 16 or 17 years old, that's abusing narcotics and alcohol. How would, if at all, that circumstance exacerbate the juvenile brain development?
Well, it can cause long-standing problems and impairment with adolescents abusing drugs and alcohol, but certainly the ability to make correct decisions and think through problem solving again, impulse control is going to be that much more impacted under the influence.
And similarly, if we were to introduce perhaps a toxic home life and some mental health challenges on top of that, would that exacerbate the issues with impulse control and decision making?
Yes.
I want to move specifically and apply what we just talked about to Mr. Amato in this case. Before we get into the specifics, ma'am, when you're conducting a psychological evaluation, are you performing some tests to get a baseline as to whether the individual is being forthright with the answers to your tests or your questions?
Yes, for any forensic legal evaluation that I do, I always provide response bias assessments, which basically look to see if the individual is trying to present themselves in any other way than being honest.
And is the presentation of these tests accepted in the community, in the scientific community?
Yes.
And you employ them with regard to the standards that are used by your peers?
Correct.
And with respect to Mr. Amato, how did he score on the, we'll call them the feigning or deception tests?
It was valid. Both of the tests that I did, as far as looking for any response bias, came out valid, meaning that he was being honest and open in the presentation.
And specifically, in terms of getting some insight into Mr. Amato and his personality, did you conduct a test on that?
I did the personality assessment inventory for adolescents, yes.
And you detailed how that procedure works in the report?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk, let's maybe start at the end and then work back. Did you come to any conclusion with respect to the personality test that you employed in this case?
Yes, I actually ended up diagnosing several different mental health diagnoses for Mr. Amato. No test is diagnostic in and of itself, so each is a data point. And I had interviewed Mr. Amato as well as both of his parents, as well as reviewed school records. So the first diagnosis that was very evident was a diagnosis of ADHD that was determined when he was 7 years old. I saw that the IQ test was done, which showed impaired working memory, which is attention concentration. That was never treated. So with an adolescent brain dealing with ADHD, that's going to obviously cause more difficulties because the ADHD is also part of the frontal lobe. Then the home environment that Mr. Amato was raised in was significantly distressful. Basically, there was a lot of parental conflict during the time that mom and dad were together. Then Mr. Amato thought his mom had abandoned him when she had left without telling him he was leaving. This ended up culminating to more and more distress among him. The parental conflict appeared to emerge to parental sabotage. And then along with this, Mr. Amato was exposed to a lot of bullying by peers. And so this progression of depression, as well as PTSD, which I ended up diagnosing because of the family dynamics and because of the history. Mr. Amato, by the time he was 13, started abusing drugs and alcohol by himself in order to cope with his distress, and at that time, that's when he switched to his quote-unquote negative peers. Suicidal ideation also started at that time. By the time he was 15, he started self-harming. And again, all of this was done without actually having any parental involvement to be able to get him psychiatric help, including a time that he showed up with the words help, or hell, on his leg that he had carved. So all of this kind of culminated to then severe substance abuse. And so with all of that data from the history of the school and my testing that pointed all that, I diagnosed the major depressive disorder and the PTSD that had appeared to be something that had been going on for a long time. I also diagnosed a borderline personality disorder, which is not necessarily neurochemical. It's really based more on the nurture aspect of our development. With the amount of the parental conflict and not having a safe, secure environment, somebody with a borderline personality disorder can end up having this severe fear of abandonment and rejection, mood mobility where it's up and down, self-harming behaviors, impulse control, etc. So all of that is what I ended up diagnosing according to the reports.
Thank you for that. And diving a little bit more specifically, but in the general context, how would a person suffering from borderline personality disorder, depression, PTSD, how would their ability to navigate a conflict situation or a stressful situation differ from somebody who is mature and not suffering from those struggles?
Well, borderline personality disorder, the general context is that they're always in a state of crisis, and so always in an extreme state of reaction. As far as PTSD, that also results in extreme reaction, so not thinking before reacting.
Right. And assume if you can confirm that if you add substance abuse on top of that and you add the immaturity of youth, that's exacerbates the inability to control themselves.
Correct.
You stated a rather bleak background for Mr. Amato and his mental state, but are there solutions to these issues?
All of the mental health diagnoses that I have diagnosed for Mr. Amato absolutely can be treated with medication and or therapy, usually a combination of both.
And is a situation like Mr. Amato's one where you would have to tackle both the substance abuse component and the mental health component at the same time?
Absolutely.
And are you familiar with it? I mean, that's an available resource that we have in the state and the country, is that correct?
Yes.
If you would introduce a stable support system and stable employment and some external, positive forces in Mr. Amato's life, would that increase the probability that he could get over these issues and live a productive life?
Paired with the mental health treatment, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
So you evaluated Mr. Amato with several tests that you just went over. You'd agree with me that these tests, it's all a matter of self-reporting, right?
Yes.
For instance, what Mr. Amato was telling you, you take as truth and you do your assessment and then write your opinion, right?
Only with the history, the background. The tests all have embedded validity scores, so I don't report tests if they're considered invalid.
Okay, but any of the testing questions, anything that you discussed with Mr. Amato, it's coming from him. That's what I mean by self-reporting. He's providing you the information, then you make your analysis, right?
For the history, for the interview, correct.
Okay. You also said that you interviewed his mom and his dad about his background as well, too?
Correct.
Okay. Throughout your evaluations, you'd agree with me, you had even described Mr. Amato as friendly and cooperative, okay? You said that to you, he appeared to have kind of a flat affect, right?
Yes.
He had no problem communicating?
Correct.
He was able to answer all of your questions in detail?
Correct.
He actually provided you a lot of insight into his background without even having to be questioned. Do you agree with me with that?
Correct.
Okay. And when you talked to Mr. Amato, you found out that he was able to get his GED, correct? He told you that he dropped out of school because he felt like he couldn't really get up for school because he was out all night.
Correct.
So he didn't drop out of school or was kicked out of school.
Correct.
And then he had no problem getting his GED after that when he was essentially a sophomore, right?
From what he said, yes.
Okay. And he also told you he had no problem getting his driver's license. He was able to acquire that.
Correct.
Okay. And he kind of described that most of the trouble he got in was him trying to protect his friends. Would you agree with me?
He said that, his mother said it, and his father said it. Correct.
Okay, so when you're saying that he had reported being bullying, there were physical fights that he would engage in as well, too, at school.
From my understanding, again, from the reports, that he had been bullied and that by the time he was 13, he was told he needed to start standing up for himself, and then the fighting ensued.
Okay, he actually told you in his own words that he got to a point where people needed to know not to mess with him, basically.
Correct.
Okay, and that was around the age of 13?
Correct.
Okay. And his mother also reported the same thing to you about the fighting at school.
Yes, correct.
She felt that he was often getting in fights because he was kind of standing up for a weaker person. Do you agree with me?
That is what she said, yes.
Okay. For most of Mr. Amato's life, I think until he was 7, he lived with his mom and his dad, right?
Yes.
After that, when they got divorced, he became a child of 2 homes, right?
Correct.
Do you know how many kids around that age actually live with divorced parents or single parents?
I don't know the statistics, no.
Okay. Very common, unfortunately, right?
It is common. What Mr. Amato was facing, though, with trying to, as he had described and his mom had described, that he would want to leave his father's house because of the aggressive parenting, and then he'd go to his mom's house and she'd have alcoholism. So then he'd go back and forth and never really felt that he had a safe space. So that's not necessarily common.
He actually told you that part of the reason that he didn't like going to his dad's house in Ponte Vedra is because he didn't feel like he felt or fit in, right? In Ponte Vedra?
That was part of the reason, yes.
Okay. And he also told you that part of the reason he couldn't go along with his dad is because he refused to get up for school.
Yes, later. Correct.
So some of the things he was having issues with could be contributed to his parents, but then some of it could be contributed to his behavior.
Of course.
Okay. Not being up for school, being, I think you described him as moody, ups and downs. You agree with me that's most 17, 18-year-old teenage boys?
That can be typical of adolescence, again, to the degree of self-harm, carving oneself, burning oneself, trying to, think about killing oneself. That is not a normal thing for adolescents.
And I'll get there. So I'm focusing just on your description of his mood in general. You said he was moody, he had ups and downs. I'm just saying some of this could also be contributed to the fact that he's a 17-year-old boy, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the bullying at school, same thing. You'd agree with me, a lot of kids are bullied at school.
There are a lot of kids bullied.
And most often, you don't really hear of someone being bullied because they're taking up for the weaker person, right?
It wasn't my understanding that that's why he was being bullied. It was my understanding he was being bullied for being overweight.
Okay. His mother explained that to you though, right? That she felt that was the issue with his fighting at school?
And Mr. Amato,
correct. You talked to him about his drug use, and pretty fair to say Mr. Amato expressed to you that he did feel like he could seek help from his parents.
He alluded to the fact that they were not aware of this, the substantial issues that he was having.
He actually had told you, per your report, that he was really good at hiding it, so he didn't ever have to get help from his parents.
Yes, correct.
That, to me, would suggest common sense. He felt he could get help from his parents.
As far as trying to understand what he felt, I think that was what he had said, given the experiences that were presented by the parents as far as what they saw. I also think that's part of the parental responsibility to seek help for a child if they're burning themselves or cutting themselves. So it's both. But it appears that the parents were aware, even though he says they were not.
You'd agree it seems like both of his parents were very present in his life.
I think that could be debated depending on which parent you're talking to.
Well, he had enough fear from his parents that he knew he shouldn't be drinking and doing drugs, right? That's why he was hiding it.
Yes.
So there was some semblance of a structured house for Mr. Amato where he felt his parents enforced the rules.
Yes, I think especially at father's house, yes.
Okay, not all children have that structure, right?
Correct.
So the fact that he was telling you that he had to hide his addictions indicates that he knew it was wrong.
Of course.
This isn't a situation where Mr. Amato's mental illness led so far into his psyche that he didn't know what he was doing was wrong, right?
This is true. It does sound like that he was allowed to drink at his mother's house. There was a specific incident when he was 13 with her 50th birthday. But yes, I understand what you're saying.
And most of the instances that you focused on your report that were triggered on his memory that he brought up to you were usually when he had been drinking alcohol or doing drugs.
I'm not so sure about that. Just as far as the history goes, I don't know, I don't think what he had told me is he was 13 when he started using drugs and alcohol. So the history that he presented prior to that would not have been under the influence.
Okay, in your report you indicated that he explained to you the reference you just made about the fight at his mother's house. He explained to you he was violently drunk and got in a fight with his stepdad.
Correct.
So that's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Okay, sometimes he was just intoxicated, right? Like he told you during this incident that he was intoxicated.
Correct.
And you indicated in some of your reports that his behaviors and actions and bad choices sometimes came and stemmed from him being intoxicated.
Agreed. Yes.
But really that goes for most everyone, right?
Correct.
Okay, so some of the instances that you put in your report regarding his mental health, when you talk to him about these things, most oftentimes you'd agree with me that the drug abuse or the alcohol was kind of existing. It was coinciding with the mental health issues that you feel you've diagnosed, right?
Correct.
Okay. But isn't it true that Mr. Amato was given opportunities to seek help in the past for his mental health?
It appears that he did, yes.
Mom actually told you that she, on not 2 but 3 different occasions, knew that they tried to get help for Mr. Amato, right?
Correct.
He had to do a mandated anger management class that he did complete, presumably. And then mom said that she tried to take him to counseling and he just wouldn't go.
Correct.
Okay, and then there was another time when mom said that he went to a couple classes and then discontinued it.
Correct.
Okay. And then the reports that you said you looked at a functional behavior assessment and behavioral intervention plan from 2021, right?
Yes.
Mr. Amato would probably been around 7 at that time?
Okay, yes.
And the same for the school district individual education plan. That would have been when he was like 7, right?
Correct. That's where I got the IQ scores. Correct.
Okay. And then the IEP plan, the psychoeducational evaluation, and the multi-tiered system of support, those records that you're relying on would have been when he was in the 1st and 2nd grade, right?
Correct. I think the functional behavior assessment was done in 2021, so he would have been a teenager at that point. But yes, the IQ, the original, is when he was 7.
Okay, so at least 4 times we know of, he underwent some type of, maybe not to the extent of what you do, but some type of evaluation to get a grip on what was going on with Mr. Amato to help him, right?
I would disagree with that. The schools don't provide any type of mental health diagnosis or treatment.
Well, a functional behavioral assessment and behavioral intervention plan, it indicates that it's dealing with Mr. Amato's behavior.
Right, and that was for the fighting, but it doesn't touch on any of the mental health aspects of the behavior.
Would you agree with me that mental health, part of it would be, well, you just testified to it, that it could be controlling of his behavior, being impulsive, not thinking before he makes a decision?
Correct.
So what I'm getting at is Mr. Amato, at some extent, I'm not saying it's as thorough as you would do, but at some extent, 4 different times, the school has at least addressed something with Mr. Amato that needed help.
They addressed, yes, the learning aspect and the fighting. Correct.
Further in your report, you were talking to Mr. Amato, it seems, about his social life. And Mr. Amato has friends. He's been able to make friends, keep relationships. He actually described to you that he would often have a girlfriend because he felt okay when he had a girlfriend.
Correct.
There was no issues with Mr. Amato's ability to meet people, maintain relationships, or anything like that that you saw other than what he described as issues between his parents.
Except for what his mother and his father had said, that he had peer rejection and did not have an ability to be able to fit in when he was a young teenager.
Okay, and that's specifically about the Ponte Vedra stuff with his dad. He didn't feel like he fit in at Ponte Vedra.
I believe so. I think that's when he switched his peer group.
Okay. He played sports growing up.
Yes.
He played soccer. I think he had addressed that his parents had said that he had hobbies like a normal teenage boy, right? He hunted, he fished. He was able to maintain his grades while also playing sports on school teams too, right?
Correct.
Okay. That indication of socialization is kind of what I'm getting at. You saw no issues with him in that regard, being able to be on teams, join with other individuals.
I didn't see any social impairments that would be found in, like an autism spectrum. I found, that there was some social rejection that was reported. But yes, there is an inability to make friends and in positive social skills.
He also described to you that his friendship with Grayson Parker, do you recall him discussing that? He stated that after his dad kicked him out of the house for not going to school, that he then moved in with Grayson Parker.
Correct.
So we know that he had a strong enough relationship, at least with that person, that they would allow him to come live with them, right?
Correct.
And the mother, Grayson Parker's mother, and Mr. Amato, when describing work history to you, for all purposes, he was a good employee, right?
That's what was
he was able to maintain a job. He was able to maintain his employment at least at 2 different places, as he described to you, with Parker's dad and then Teresa service. And his mother actually described that he was an amazing employee, he never missed a day of work.
Correct.
So we know that he is, despite his diagnosis, he's able to stay on a schedule. He's somewhat what you would consider organized with his time.
Correct.
Okay. He was able, other than the not wanting to get up for school, which you would agree with me, again, that's most teenage boys, right? So other than things like that he reported to you before we get into the self-harming, he was able to maintain and live a pretty normal life, you'd agree with me?
It sounds like it up until about teenage years, correct?
He never reported sexual abuse, right?
Correct.
He never reported physical abuse, right?
Aggressive parenting that I think was threatening, but not physical abuse.
Okay. And the verbal abuse, that actual term, that came from you, not him, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's more of a psychological, yes.
Okay. And that was based on him talking about his parents fighting.
Correct.
Okay. Ultimately ended in a divorce, right?
Correct. And continued parental sabotage with each other, yes.
Okay. So Mr. Amato has never been homeless. He's never been cast out, right?
Correct. He was staying with a friend. Yes.
He had 2 stable parents.
Yes, yes.
Who each had a home that he
Correct.
was welcome at until he decided to quit school, and obviously we touched on that. But for the most part, he had food, he had shelter, he had a job, he had friends, he had a girlfriend. He actually was brought up in church. You discovered throughout your report at an early age he had been going to church. His dad explained that that was a bigger part of his life at the front end.
Correct.
Okay. And his dad actually told you that he had tried to give him some help when Noah disclosed to him in 2018 that he felt he had a drug problem.
I don't recall that. I know that he had asked for help after his uncle had died. So I stated that, but I don't recall that.
In that instance, what kind of treatment was sought by Noah's dad?
I have no idea. He had said that he had offered therapy and that Noah then did not want to go. Noah had initially, Mr. Amato had initially wanted to get therapy after the loss of his uncle, but apparently then it was not continued.
So your understanding was that wasn't drug related?
I was not given any information of what was the relation. My assumption was that it was due to the grief loss.
But he felt comfortable enough to go to his parents and say, hey, I need help.
Correct.
Which should also be indicative that his parents were supporting. In your report, you put that you feel he indicates a pattern of unreliable and irresponsible behaviors, where he has probably sustained little success in the social and academic realm.
Is that the indication of the test?
At page 8 under personality, I'm referring to paragraph 4.
Yeah, so that is the data from the test. So the psychological test is not specific to one person. These include various profiles, and so this is more indicative of a profile. And so when I do diagnosis, as I said, I will take the history, documentation, and the profile of the evaluation to then formulate the diagnosis.
Okay. I'm specifically referring to that 4th paragraph. You said his profile also indicates, so that's what you're talking about?
Correct, yes.
But these are your findings from the test that you completed?
Correct, yes.
And part of that, you said that he suggests a manifestation of behaviors to include criminal activity, property destruction, and physical aggression, as well as reckless behaviors and an entertainment of risks that are potentially dangerous to himself and those around him.
Correct. And that would have come from endorsements that he did as far as what was in the test.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Redirect.
Dr. Nicolino, Ms. Thomas had asked you some questions regarding the mother's identification of some mental health issues back when Mr. Amato was young. Would you agree that that identification, perhaps 10 years ago, corroborates the finding that Mr. Amato suffers from mental health issues?
Correct, yes.
And that this is not some Johnny-come-lately ploy to the court during sentencing?
Correct.
And similarly, whenever Mr. Amato was in a more individualized focused capacity in school, that would also be indicative that he's had mental health struggles from the time that he was a young man.
Yes, as I had said, the functional behavior assessment is not necessarily a mental health diagnosis, but certainly behavioral problems.
And you were asked a lot of questions about Mr. Amato's ability to socialize and to live a normal life. And I think even when I was questioning you, you ran a distinction between a borderline sort of personality and somebody that might suffer from autism or something like that. Would you agree that when we're dealing with borderline personality, depression, and PTSD, the scope of those frailties as they pertain to this sentencing hearing are one's ability to have impulse control and decision-making in a conflict situation?
Yes, that would absolutely impact that in a negative way.
Just because a person has depression, does that mean that they're unable from living what would, from an outsider's perspective, seem to be a normal life?
No.
If a person has borderline personality disorder, would that mean that they are incapable of having any friendships?
No, I think the context of friendships become exacerbated by this desperate need to feel fit in and not be rejected and abandoned. So the dynamics of the relationships are much, they're different, but it doesn't prevent them from having friendships.
In fact, a person that is suffering from borderline personality disorder or perhaps PTSD, if they were perhaps insulted or disrespected in a certain way, would their temperament be exacerbated way beyond the level of disrespect that they receive?
Yes. Again, borderline personality disorders tend to live in a state of crisis at all times, and PTSD causes it in intense reactivity, fight or flight.
Okay. And then if you added substance abuse by an adolescent on top of those things, you would have an even more toxic reaction to something that perhaps should not, require such an inflammatory response.
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, Ms. Woods, to be excused?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional expert witnesses from either side?
No, Judge, I'll stay.
Likewise,
All right.
That's right.
Mr. Bruce, would you like to present?
I would defer to the state from here on out.
I have witnesses, Judge.
All right. Who would you like to call?
First, I'm going to call the victim, Mr. Brokus. He's on Zoom.
Mr. Brokus, you can go ahead and turn your audio on, sir. All right, sir, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. State, you may inquire.
Hi, Mr. Brokus.
Hi, good morning.
Can you just state your full name for the court, please, sir?
Schneider Zolman Brokus.
And where are you at right now, Mr. Brokus?
I'm currently in Washington, D.C.
Okay, did you have trouble with your flight getting here?
Yeah, unfortunately, it got canceled. I was in the airport till about 1 a.m. This morning. And yeah, I don't have my suit because of that. I would come, but.
That's okay, we appreciate you making it. And my understanding, Mr. Brokus, is that you want to address the court. You have a semi-statement, and I've explained that to Mr. Probisco. I don't think there's any issue, Judge.
There's no issue with that.
All right, sir, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come on the Zoom. I really appreciate this, the chance to be able to say my story and to be able to address the court. I'd like to start by saying that as of the beginning of this court case, I've noticed so many similarities between myself and Noah. For starters, I have ADHD. I was diagnosed. At the age of 14 years old, I went away to boarding school, away from both my parents. I suffered from obesity. I weighed 203 pounds when I was 15 years old. I have since lost it. And I've worked very hard to get over the abuse that I've endured from some of my friends and some of the bullying I've endured. And I have never reacted in the way that I'm hearing he has. I heard it was mentioned before that it was his reaction, that this was the way he reacted to a certain situation. I don't think it was a reaction. He was the provoker. In the first place, he's the one that first yelled at us and started the arguments, and he provoked us. I want to point that out. Now, with my statement, I want to start with saying a line from the Haggadah, which is something we read every year on Passover. And that is, in every generation, for not only one enemy has risen up against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise up to destroy us. That's something we read every single year. I never thought that I would really encounter something like that a pure anti-Semitic attack against myself and other Jews, especially in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, on a holiday. I want to point that out. It was the evening of Simchas Torah, which is a holiday that we celebrate the giving of the Torah. It was after some celebrating, where I was enjoying the holiday with my family and some friends, and me and a couple of my cousins wanted to walk to the beach. We were enjoying it. We were enjoying the beautiful area, and we were walking back towards our home, where I was staying, their home, and two guys on bicycles come past us, and one of them yells out to us some very derogatory terms, anti-Semitic, homophobic, not that any of us, are gay, but still, just derogatory terms. And one of us responded. He actually called us, he called us Amish at first. One of us responded that we're not Amish, we're Jewish. And then he yelled some anti-Semitic slurs, turned around to come towards us to confront us. So that was the provoke. We never provoked him. It wasn't like he reacted to that. It was not because of all this trauma that he had, that he's more reactive. That's not the case at all. He provoked us. He came to me and my cousins, and he got in our face, and he started to yell at us, and it was obvious that he was trying to start a fight. When he got too close to my younger cousin, I got in the middle of it, and I told him to back off. At that time, he had a chance to step away. We gave it to him. We even had a little back and forth there. He could have walked away. And by the way, my frontal lobe isn't fully developed either. I'm 21 years old. At the time, I was, I believe, 19. And like I said, I also have ADHD, which I cope with every day, and I believe it's actually a blessing. This past week I've had to relive this situation that happened. And I realized how I've been so emotional this past week. I've been actually a bit of an emotional wreck. You can ask my wife. But it's been really tough because I feel like ever since that incident, I've seen so many anti-Semitic attacks, and before that I've experienced almost none. And the world is becoming a place where we're excusing actions like that, where it's okay because of something that happened as a child, or that he was bullied, or this or that. That's not a reason to do something so malicious. And every day I have to think, and I have to watch my back, and I believe I suffer from some sort of PTSD in which I totally kind of try not to think about it as much as I can, and when I do think about it, or when I hear stories of it, I'm very, very emotional about people get attacked, and I know what it feels like. And I know what true powerlessness feels like. When somebody's holding a gun to me, and I remember what I responded. I said, "Are you going to shoot me?" I couldn't believe it, because I've seen this in movies, I've seen it in TV shows, but I never ever thought that I would experience it just for being a Jew. A Jew who has done nothing to anybody to hurt them ever in my life. And I'm a friendly person. I'm not somebody who tries to start arguments with people or would ever even think about pulling a gun. It's just like so out of my comprehension, to be honest. At this point, I've become very hyper aware of my surroundings. That's one thing that I could say definitely has affected me. It's sometimes I'll see somebody coming from behind me with a hood. I'll be a little bit. I'll try to be more aware of it, because I'm aware of the evilness that is unfortunately here in the world. I also want to point out that exactly a year later, on Simchas Torah, on this holiday, was the October 7th attack. And I only realized that this week, but that I feel like is a very, very powerful thing.
Can you talk to the judge specifically about your injury, what happened?
Yes. So what happened was, after I said, "You're going to shoot me," he pulled the trigger. He shot the gun. And I'm not exactly sure how that's been brought up in the court, but we all heard it. We all saw it. And I fell to the floor and I blacked out for a little bit. Like the next thing I remember was he was biking off. And I heard the bang. And I felt on the side of my face it was very heavy, and there was some blood. And it was at night, it was dark. When I got back and I looked in the mirror, I saw I was very swollen, and there was black marks.
And Mr. Baracus, I don't know if you can see these, but the defense didn't have any objection to me moving them in, since he's not here to lay the predicate judge.
All right.
So I'd ask to move in what's been previously marked as states A1 and A2.
Any objections? No. Those will be received as states exhibits 1 and 2.
I'm just going to hand them to you, Judge.
All right.
Just, Mr. Baracus, the judge does have the photographs of your injuries. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead and continue.
No problem at all. I believe that this man should have the maximum punishment. I want to say that I hope that the court understands that what I saw on this man's face, that it was a malicious human being who enjoyed the feeling of power over somebody else. Holding a gun to my face, he looked like that's where he felt comfortable. And regardless of his background, this man cannot be in society. He cannot be in society. I've never experienced anything like it. Like I said, I have some similarities in my childhood as he did. I don't have a GED. I don't have a high school diploma. But I have a job. I work every day. I travel around. I got married. I support myself. I support my wife as she goes to school and she's getting her degree. And I get to be, and I feel very blessed to be here today, actually, because, my life could have been over that day. My life could have been over that day. And I believe it's a miracle from God, and I thank Him every day. And I just, this is a story I'm going to tell my children. This is a story I'm going to tell my grandchildren. And I hope it's a story that ends with us being safer and we're able to live in society without being feared. And I can wear my yarmulke proudly and wear a Star of David and not be afraid that that's gonna, people are gonna look at me differently because of it. I have never looked at myself as a victim. I want that to be known. I never looked at myself as a victim. And in this case, I know there's no, by definition, I am the victim. But more importantly, I am a witness to an atrocity and to a very, very, for lack of better words, disgusting action by Noah Amato. I hope that he gets the maximum sentence, and thank you for listening to me, and I think that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Baracus. The defense attorney is going to get to ask you some questions now.
Sure.
Good morning, Mr. Baracus. Sir, I want to start off by saying that when I'm questioning, I don't mean to undermine the significance of what happened, and I don't make any excuses for the escalation that my client engaged in this. I do have a job to do, and I need to ask you some clarifying questions. I do understand that.
I do.
Mr. Baracus, you had mentioned in your statement, or rather, I think you had failed to mention that Mr. Amato, after the nasty things that he said to you guys, rode his bike at least 50 to 75 yards away from the group and was heading away. And it wasn't until your younger cousin, Dobie, who was intoxicated and aggressive, yelled at him and he came back. Do you agree with that?
So I agree that my cousin responded to his yells at us. He responded to him. I don't believe that he was actively intoxicated at the time.
Okay, well let's I don't mean to interrupt you, sir, but do you remember when I took your deposition, we did it via Zoom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that question about Dobie's level of intoxication came up during the deposition, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Okay. In fact, my notes, and we have the transcript, we can talk about it, on page 10, lines 21 through 23, that question was such a hot button issue to you that you would agree that you said in your own words, I'm not going to answer that question. Do you remember those words to me?
It's not my place to answer that.
Okay. I went on to ask you about how the alcohol is affecting Dobie, and the specific question that I asked you at page 14 through 16, lines 1 through 5 was, at the point that an aggravating event occurred, you observed him to be more aggressive than you had observed him to be in the past, and your answer was yes. Do you recall that statement that you made?
Dobie's a very chill guy.
Sir, and I'm sure that he is, and I'll stipulate that he's a very chill guy, but my question on the table, sir, to you is that under sworn testimony a few months ago, you characterized Dobie, your cousin, as being more aggressive than he was in the past when he was intoxicated.
Yes.
Thank you. And similarly, you would agree that after there was an exchange of words, and words only, by Mr. Amato and your group, Mr. Amato drove his bicycle many yards away, and before he came back, he was yelled at by your cousin Dobie.
He was responded to by my cousin Dobie, correct? That's what I'm listening.
And we can mix words, I'll just put it in the plainest way possible. Noah was riding away, Dobie was yelling, and Noah came back, right?
Noah was yelling, Dobie responded, because I wanted to be known that it was not he was not reacting to us by attacking us. He was being the provoker. I want that's how it happened, and I don't want that to get mixed up here. Now, you're asking me he rode away and there were words yelled towards him? Correct. But not yelled at him and that we were provoking him at all? Absolutely not. Okay. Because I know that's what we're trying to apply.
Do you have a recollection of your cousin Dobie saying something to the effect of, come say that to my face when Noah is like 50 feet or more away?
I do not have a recollection of the exact words, but I'm not surprised that that was said. That's very possible.
And while that's being said, Noah and his friend are biking away from you and your family, right?
I'm not sure if at the time they were biking or they were just, whatever amount of yards ahead of us. They just weren't right in front of us at the time. I don't think that they were actively biking away.
So something occurred to create a considerable distance between you two, whether it was they were biking or walking.
Sure, but not enough space that we could hear each other pretty comfortably. We weren't waking up neighbors. It wasn't like we were yelling at the top of our lungs. We were in a proximity, to be able to hear each other.
Okay. And we'll move on for this, but just on page 36 of your deposition at line 10, you say he was on his bike, he, Noah, riding past you guys, right? That's my question to you. You say, yes, he biked past us first. And then the question to you on line 14 was, after Dobie was yelling out to him, that's when he turned back. And your answer was, yeah. Is that a fair characterization of what happened?
Yeah.
Okay. And similarly, when we're talking about things that weren't mentioned in your initial statement today, you agreed that prior to you being subjected to something with this firearm, you pushed Mr. Amato.
I did when I asked him to step away, and he not only did not step away, but he got more in our face. I did it as a protection, but I pushed him away. I pushed him away. Yes, exactly.
All right. And you were the first person to use any physicality in this situation.
If you consider physicality actually touching him, then
yes, sir, I do. Okay. Thank you. And you would agree with me that you never went to the hospital for any injuries that you sustained in connection with this event?
That is correct.
Okay, you never, people cannot go to the hospital and still injured, but you never had a broken bone from this incident?
No broken bones.
Okay. We have a picture that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. I showed it to you in your deposition. That picture was taken maybe 14, 15 hours after this event?
Correct.
Correct. And that's because this event wasn't reported to law enforcement until 12 or more hours later, correct?
Yeah,
okay.
Unfortunately.
And you're contending, and we agree that there was a firearm that Mr. Amato possessed that day. That would have been a blunt, hard metal object, correct?
A gun is a blunt, hard metal object, yes.
Okay. And you don't have any injuries on your face that are consistent with you being shot by a bullet from that blunt metal object, do you?
I'm no professional, but he shot the gun, and I have marks on my face, and none of us remember me actually, by the way, getting hit by it. I think that it was from the bullet itself that those marks. Yeah, that's my belief.
Okay. In connection with this event finally being reported to law enforcement, you had some conversation with many members of the community, correct?
Not many, but I had a conversation. If I remember correctly, I had a conversation with my brother Mendel, who was there. I spoke to my uncle. There was services. I walked in mid services, so I woke up that morning a little bit late, and I was just like, oh my God, that wasn't a dream. That actually happened yesterday. And I quickly got dressed. I went to services, which was a couple blocks away. I was staying at my grandparents' house, a couple blocks away from the synagogue. And I came in. It was mid services, so it wasn't like I was going around talking to everybody. But during the service, my brother stood up and said, I want to mention that this happened yesterday because he heard the story, and he stood up and he said, my brother got shot in an anti-Semitic attack, and we should all praise the Lord because of it.
And he said that in the middle of the service to everybody in the congregation?
He did. He mention it? So people were all aware of it, but I did not have a conversation with everybody about it. As soon as my aunt heard of it, which was right there, she called the cops, and she was very frustrated that we hadn't. And we were just, our frontal lobes weren't fully developed, I guess. Aren't fully,
So it wasn't until the entire congregation heard about the issue that the authorities were involved?
Yeah, the whole congregation had heard about it at that point.
And,
And by the way, the authorities took quite some time to get there. So it wasn't like right away it was reported before I had any conversation. Like as soon as my aunt heard about it, she reported it, I believe. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like we were having a conference talking about it and, no.
Understood. And one of the people that you talked to about this event was your uncle, Mr. Kerensky?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you failed to mention to him that you had pushed Mr. Amato prior to you being struck with a firearm.
In the light of the circumstances that the man shot me, I may have left out the fact that I had pushed him away, trying to get him to go away from us. I'm sure I mentioned we tried to de-escalate it, and in that, no, I don't think I mentioned every specific line and detail of it. And even today, it's hard for me to recall every single, but especially right after the incident, I was definitely experiencing some sort of post-traumatic stress.
Understood. Another thing that you didn't mention to Mr. Kerensky was that Dobie was acting rowdy and had been drinking. You didn't mention those things to him either, did you?
I don't remember if I mentioned that to him or not, but I don't see why I would have mentioned that Dobie was acting rowdy when Dobie was acting quite normal until the circumstances started getting provoked. So
you don't remember telling him anything about your cousin's intoxication or demeanor that night when you were telling the story?
The holiday is called Simchas Torah, and that's called the happiness of the Torah. Meaning as Jews, we're so happy that we were able to receive the Bible on this day, and then we commemorate it. We were all in a very joyous, happy mood.
I don't quarrel with any of that. My question is about the information that you conveyed to your uncle. That's the question on the table right now. And if you want, we can.
I don't remember.
Okay. You would also agree that your reluctance to call law enforcement that night had something to do with the fact that your cousin Dobie was underage and intoxicated.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Barocas, just very briefly about what you just told the defense attorney. Isn't it true that you also did not have a phone on you to call law enforcement at the time that this happened?
No,
you were not, sorry, you were not supposed to be using a phone. Okay, can you just explain that to the court really quick about the holiday that you guys were celebrating?
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, being that, technically we're supposed to, in a circumstance like that, we're supposed to go to a phone and call law enforcement. That's what the law is, but we're young and we're not accustomed. I've never used a phone on the Sabbath or on a holiday. It's totally prohibited on those days, and that's what none of us had a phone on us, and it wasn't our first reaction. Like, we were still far away from our home, and we separated. I dropped them off at their place, and I went to my place. We did not have phones on us. We were not accustomed to using phones. It was an extenuated circumstance in that matter.
All right, and nobody in your group had weapons of any kind?
No.
You didn't have a stick, you didn't have a rock, nothing?
We're not allowed to carry also on that day unless we're in a private area.
Okay, and you guys were on foot, they were on bikes?
On foot, wearing suits, not ready for any type of, and they were on bicycles.
All right.
Aren't ready.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, so you can turn your microphone back on mute. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Before we get recessed.
All